Nobody really warns you about the money emergencies that actually cause the most damage. After watching this video, you'll realize that your school didn't mention them, that most financial advice don't include them, and that the stories people usually talk about don't include them either. Simply because they don't feel dramatic when you talk about them. It's far cooler to talk about how you lost your job and found a new one than what I'm about to tell you. But you'll want to know them, because if you're a working adult, you'll eventually be exposed to them at least once in your life. The first one is insurance gaps and deductibles. Now, insurance is supposed to protect you, and most of the time it does, if you read carefully the terms. But one of the most common money emergencies comes from the gap between what people think insurance covers and what it actually does. Deductibles, co-pays, exclusions, out-of-network charges, and coverage limits all create situations where you're technically insured but still responsible for large, immediate costs. This is especially dangerous because it doesn't feel like an emergency at first. People assume insurance will handle it, so they don't plan for the cash side. Then the bill arrives, and a few $1,000s due quickly, and sometimes even more. And because this expense often arrives alongside stress, illness, or an accident, your decision-making suffers, so a lot of people are forced to dip into savings meant for other things, sometimes to use credit or to delay other bills. And so these insurance gaps create emergencies not because people are careless, but because the system is complex and rarely explained clearly. And since these gaps are predictable but not visible day to day, they catch people off guard when it matters most. Another extremely common money emergency is the gap between paychecks. Not losing a job entirely, not a dramatic layoff, just a delay. I'm talking about a missed shift, a commission that comes late, a freelance payment that doesn't arrive on time, or even an unpaid sick week. These income gaps happen all the time, and they're rarely treated like emergencies. But for people whose finances are built around precise timing, even a short delay can cause real problems. Because on the other hand, your bills surely don't wait, your rent doesn't move, and your automatic payments still go through. So without a buffer, people are forced into quick fixes, like credit cards, overdrafts, borrowing, and even skipping other obligations. What makes income gaps so damaging is that they're normal enough to ignore but disruptive enough to destabilize everything. They expose how dependent the system is on money arriving exactly when expected, and once timing breaks, catching up is harder than most people anticipate. One of the least talked about money emergencies is forced spending for other people. I'm talking about helping family, supporting a friend, covering costs during illness, crisis, or transition. Even paying for travel, housing, childcare, or basic needs when someone else can't. These expenses don't usually show up in most people's budgets. They simply aren't planned for. And they rarely feel optional. Emotional pressure makes them urgent. Saying no feels wrong. I mean, would you like your partner saying no to paying some of the rent when you're in a hospital? And so you can imagine that because these situations often arise suddenly, there's no time to prepare. What makes forced spending so dangerous is that it's invisible in most financial advice. It doesn't fit the neat categories. But it happens constantly. And because people don't frame it as an emergency, they absorb the cost quietly, often at the expense of their own stability. Over time, these decisions compound, and so your savings disappear, your debts grow, and you're building stress in the meantime. Now, some of the most damaging money emergencies don't come from one big expense. They come from many small ones that slowly grow. Insurance premiums that increase quietly, subscriptions that stack up, maintenance costs that rise, fees that creep in. Each change feels manageable on its own, but together, they quietly reshape your budget. What used to fit no longer does. Your cash flow tightens and your flexibility disappears. And because nothing dramatic happened, people don't react. They adapt and they absorb. Until one more expense pushes things over the edge. That's when it suddenly feels like an emergency. But the damage was building long before that moment. Underestimated recurring costs are dangerous because they don't feel urgent. They don't trigger action right away. And by the time they're noticed, reversing them is difficult. The emergency isn't the increase, it's the accumulation. Another common money emergency comes from lifestyle commitments that can't be paused. Rent or mortgage payments, car loans, childcare, insurance, tuition, long-term contracts. These commitments are often reasonable and responsible. They make sense when income is stable. The problem isn't having them. It's how inflexible they are when something changes. Because unfortunately, when income dips, expenses don't follow. They stay exactly the same, and we stay pissed about it. And when most of your budget is locked into fixed costs, you can say bye-bye to your flexibility. One unexpected event forces impossible choices. You now have to choose which bill gets delayed, which obligation creates penalties, or which future problem you're willing to accept to survive the present. Lifestyle commitments don't feel like emergencies when you sign up for them. They become emergencies when life stops cooperating. And because they're socially normalized, people underestimate the risk they create. Next, one of the most overlooked money emergencies isn't a bill at all. It's opportunity loss. When people are in crisis mode, they stop making forward-looking decisions. They pause investing. They skip opportunities. They turn down career moves because they need stability now. They sell assets at bad times. They accept worse terms just to reduce stress. These invisible costs don't show up on statements, but they can be enormous over time. The emergency doesn't just cost money, it costs momentum, it alters trajectories. And because these losses are invisible, people underestimate how damaging they are. Opportunity loss is especially painful because it compounds quietly. Years later, people wonder why progress feels slower than expected. Often, the answer traces back to decisions made during moments of financial pressure. The emergency didn't just take money, but it took options as well. The most common money emergencies all share one thing. They're predictable but socially ignored. They don't match the dramatic image of a crisis. They don't feel urgent until it's too late, so people don't prepare for them. Insurance gaps, income timing issues, family obligations, rising recurring costs, inflexible commitments, opportunity loss. These aren't rare events, they're normal life patterns. And that's exactly why they're dangerous. Financial damage doesn't usually come from what people fear most. It comes from what people dismiss as just being how things are. The emergencies that hurt finances the most are the ones people don't take seriously because they don't feel like emergencies at the moment they begin. The goal here certainly isn't fear, but awareness. Expect interruptions. Assume income won't always arrive perfectly. Accept that costs will rise. Understand that life will demand money in uncomfortable moments. Preparation isn't about pessimism, but it's about reducing surprise, building margin instead of perfection, designing flexibility instead of assuming stability. When people plan for interruptions instead of ideal conditions, emergencies lose much of their power. They become setbacks instead of collapses. Awareness doesn't eliminate problems. It changes how those problems behave when they arrive. And that difference matters more than most people realize. If you like this video about money emergencies and you want to watch other content linked to finance, economics, or productivity, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and click on one of the videos showing at your screen right now. Alright, I'll see you on the next one.